Hello, my name is Ulises Castaneda, and I will be discussing Chapter 1, the communication process, in this presentation today. The hook. So, as I'm pretty sure, I don't know how many people know here, but I've mentioned it a few times that I'm autistic, and although I know my social cues better, or I do know them, and after I've read this chapter, I knew how to pick up the more subtle um, cues. I was kind of good, and I mean, obviously, over time, I got better at communicating with people, but I was still a bit shaky. Still, even when quarantine happened and I didn't have really much social interaction, so I kind of shied away for a bit. But after reading this, I've used some of these tips in this chapter, and I've noticed just my relationships with friends grew even better, and people have responded to me. Well, not better, but um, I guess my relationships, or like the friendships, are like more deep than before, and I hope it can help some people who are just like introverted or maybe just need a little help, just like me. How it kind of helped me out, especially after I started to go out more after getting vaccinated and having to talk to people. So the outline for this is the process, the context, and how the tips helped me. So the communication process, I'm going to start with the first one, communicators, which is just basically two people talking to each other back and forth. Not really much to it. And coding, just making thoughts, ideas, and feelings into verbal or nonverbal communications. Decoding is just making those messages and just giving them meaning. And then symbol, a sign or character that portrays something. And then message is um just verbal and nonverbal signs that render thoughts, feelings, and ideas. And then channel is just basically an A/B conversation, uh, just you and the other person, and like no one else in between. That's what the channel is. Like just the two of you interacting with each other. And then feedback is just you responding to whatever uh, the communicator is saying, and whatever you're saying, whatever you're saying, the communicator would just uh give you their feedback. And then noise is just like uh, whatever can like interrupt the communication process, like where it's taking place, um, and then individually and then rationally and or culturally in terms of context. So context, physical tongue, physical context is just wherever the communication or wherever the conversation. I keep don't want to say communication a lot, but wherever it's taking place, wherever your conversation is taking place, like a coffee shop where it's more calm and it's easier to just get your message across, maybe, or it's just somewhere where you're more comfortable with, compared to like maybe a concert where it's like kind of chaotic, with the atmosphere and all the fans raving and whatever. Maybe the loud music makes it hard to hear each other. Relational context is just um, basically using like whatever previous relationship you had with this person and using the history of it, just like sorry, like if someone's running to go to the grocery store and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna just get a couple things," and then you mention like, "Oh, like, can you like get the apples maybe?" And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then like if you get it, if they text you like, "Oh, hey, just left," that's one thing. Like they just left. Like it may not mean anything to anybody, but like to you and this other person, it may just mean it means they left the store, and then you respond like, "Okay, cool. Like, did you get the apples? I mean, or did you get it?" Which it could be the apples because that's what you told them earlier. Individual context is just personality traits that are connected to us. Sorry. And cultural context is just a group of people believing in the same values and beliefs. And so, let me just move my camera. So, how it's helped someone like me. And so, this list right here is from a website. These are the difficulties in social settings, and I'll just read them to you. Facial expressions, hard to understand nonverbal communication like body language, holding a conversation, keeping eye contact, and seeing other people's perspectives. So, from my history of uh, being an autistic male, facial expressions wasn't really hard for me. At least when I was younger, like I was taught these things, and it improved over time. Um, Reading body language was um, is hard for me, and after like taking this course, it's kind of made me better uh, made me read people better. Just in social settings, holding a conversation, it's kind of something I still kind of struggle with because I don't want to talk about like my interests or at least like stuff I just know more about, and I don't want them to explain to me what they know more about because then sometimes I kind of don't get interested and um just start questioning a lot like, oh, what is that, and whatever, and just like it's just not something enjoyable for me, and so that's something I still struggle with. Keeping eye contact is another thing I still struggle with, even now, just trying to look at the webcam just so it looks like I'm talking to you more. But whenever I think of stuff, I like look the other way and whatever. And that's something I discuss. I bring up every time I'm talking to someone or one of my friends, like, "Oh, sorry, I'm not keeping eye contact." And luckily, it's usually fine. And then seeing other people's perspectives. I didn't really notice this one too much, but it's a common thing with autistic people, and with me it's not so much, it's not really bad. I'm not really severe in terms of where I am, and I not saying like me saying, but I've had people also tell me like how empathetic I am, and even a teacher explained because I was like, why do I get this feeling? And then she told me like, oh, it's called empathy, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so what I got from it, just being able to read facial expressions, I learned body language, and then seeing other people's point of views, uh, or empathy basically, and that's what I got from this chapter. Yep. And so here are the, let me move this. Here are the media examples that I chose for my presentation.
Today, we're going to talk about the communication cycle, specifically the 8 different components that make it up. Sure, you may not have heard of the communication cycle before, but some of these components are going to seem pretty familiar. To begin, we always start with the sender, who has some kind of idea that he is trying to get to a receiver. So that begs the question, how does an idea get from the sender to the receiver? Well, that idea represents the third component in the communication cycle, and that is the message, the idea being communicated. And for our sender here, well, he has a very specific idea in mind. He is in love, and he can't wait to communicate it. So now we arrive at our fourth component, which is the encoding phase. To encode is simply to package the message. And you really only have 3 different options. They are either verbal, nonverbal, or both. Our sender has decided that a love letter would be the best way to encode his message. This brings us to our 5th component, and that is the channel, which is simply defined as how the receiver takes in the message. Human beings have 5 channels. Think, what else do you have 5 of? If you guessed your 5 senses, you'd be right. Hearing, seeing, and feeling are the primary ways in which human beings take in information. And in this case, if it's a love letter, she will be using sight. Having taken in this message, she now needs to make sense of it. And another word for that is our next component, and that is to decode it. So if encoding is packaging your message, decoding is making sense of it. So, she's unpackaged the message. Now all we do is wait for her response. What do you think? Will she be into him? Okay, it looks like she is. And that response that she's giving right there, that's our next component. And that is the feedback loop. Any response the receiver gives to the sender. So there you have it, one effective cycle of communication. But wait, we're forgetting our final element, and that is noise, which is simply defined as anything complicating a message being sent or received. So if our sender has bad handwriting, our receiver can no longer decode his message. This, of course, alters her response, and therein changes the feedback. So in the end, it seems miscommunication is just as much a part of this cycle. Thanks for watching.
Then we have the next video.
All people with autism can have their own challenges interacting socially with others, but when given the right support, all people with autism can thrive socially and develop meaningful and true relationships. Many children with autism want to play with their peers, but they might just need a little bit of extra support and guidance to get there. Examples of challenges that a child with autism might have could include asking their peers to play with them, understanding the emotions and feelings of others, negotiating turn-taking, noticing social cues, such as when somebody's no longer interested in the game anymore, or following a pretend play scenario. Providing structure and predictability through routines and visual supports can really help children with autism develop their confidence in interacting with others. You can also support a child with autism within their social interactions by providing structured opportunities to practice turn-taking, providing adult models alongside visual supports. An example of this might be a visual support that shows children how to ask someone to play with them. You can also include the child's interests and strengths in the interaction, allowing ample time to engage in their own play, explicitly teaching emotional recognition and understanding of social cues. For further support, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our website.
Yeah, all that stuff. It's very familiar to me. Okay. And now we have the quiz questions. What is physical context? Is it a hug or a handshake? B, where communication takes place? Or C, athletic activities? So if you guessed B, that is the correct one. Communication takes place. Um, it can just be like anywhere, like maybe your room or the like a campfire maybe where it's warm and nice. Just a place, any place. What is encoding? Is it A, forming thoughts into verbal or nonverbal communication? B, making something into code? Or C, computer terminology? If you guessed A, that's correct. It's forming thoughts into verbal or nonverbal communication. And then the last question, can the communication process go as planned? A, is this true? Or B, is it false? And I would say it's B, false, just because like on that one video, um, a slide ago on the first video, he mentions like, oh, there is like a like noise interrupted the communicate the the process, and like what if miscommunication happened, like, and like it did on that video where the uh, the lady misinterpreted like what the guy was saying. So conclusion. So in conclusion, like I mentioned in the very beginning, it has refreshened and like improved my social skills as a person with autism, and has kind of really helped me out um in the real world. And what I mean by the real world is just being able to talk to adults and feel like an adult, just because I uh, can have an insecurity of like that, like I feel like I talk like a high schooler, even though like in the real world everybody's just like whatever. And um and like just being able to communicate better and just being able to read people better um has also helped me, because it's it's been able to help me just like know if they're interested in the conversation or not, or if they want to like hang out with me or not. And then these are my sources that I use throughout the presentation. And thank you for looking into my presentation, and I hope I did well.